Good day. Welcome to the Strong Ambition podcast. Today we're going to talk about in-person on-the-go training with Jayce Van Alstyne. Jayce is actually an old colleague and friend of mine, and I graduated with him in kinesiology. So we've known each other for quite some time, and we got into the industry at the same time. So this is going to be a really fun discussion because I can ask him what really inspired him to get into training, what it was like for him, and the difficulties he had coming out of university, similar to myself, and all the difficulties that trainers face. And what was it like getting into the fitness on the go brand that he worked with for so long? And we'll find out what it was like to transition away from that business. And of course, we're going to talk about what pisses him off most with social media and fitness these days. And we also dive into what it was like to support his wife, Alyssa, through her very difficult path. Back at episode 90, I had his wife, Alyssa Van Alstyne, on, and she talks more about all the difficult things that she went to when the medical system was not giving her any answers. And so if you haven't caught that episode, please take a listen to it because it is incredible. All the pain and difficulty she had to go through just to get some answers from something the medical industry just couldn't give her any solutions to. And Jayce supported her through all of that. So if you want some good context to a part of this discussion, listen to episode 90 and come back to this one. But if you have listened to that episode, this works great because then you're going to really appreciate where he's coming from when he talks about his side of the story. And just as a side note, I have to remind you, if you didn't hear it on the last episode, I now have a do-it-yourself fitness group that is officially launched. It's live this week. So if you're interested in that, don't hesitate to reach out on social media, on email, or anything. You can hop in on that completely free. It's going to have trainings on how to make your own nutrition, training, anything that you want, and it's all free. And you get a Facebook group to help support you throughout it. But let's get into the discussion here with Jayce because he's got a lot to tell you. So without further ado, here is Jayce Van Alstyne. Good day, Jayce. How are you, sir?
Doing great, man. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm very swell myself. It's awesome to finally get you on here. We've been trying to line this up for a while.
Yeah.
And, so the viewers or listeners know we've known each other for a while, both got into the industry over a decade ago. But let's start with that. Let's talk about what got you into what you're doing now.
Yeah. We met in kinesiology. So we were there. Well, I was there 09 to 2013 at the U of M for that. And not really sure what to do with it afterwards, to be honest. There wasn't a whole lot of people saying, hey, we're hiring kinesiologists in Manitoba. It just wasn't really a thing back then. I don't really know if it is now because I'm not looking for that at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, back then, personal training or go to do physio or kind of pick up odd jobs, those were kind of my options, and that's what I did. So I sampled after graduation, just kind of sampled a few different things, did some work at the Wellness Institute, did personal training, contracting from a few different places. I did some testing for firefighters, police, RCMP. There was a position at the U of M that had that, and I thought that sounded like fun, and it really was. But it was all kind of casual positions, nothing that could really land you some solid hours or job security, I guess. Which is part of the reason I went kind of into the route of entrepreneurship anyway. Was just calling the shots felt like a better option in terms of just what direction do you want to take? Well, it's up to you. I mean, you might have some influences from outside sources, but at the end of the day, I wanted to figure out, how I could carve my own path. So, so personal training was kind of I guess I want to say the path of least resistance to start the entrepreneurial journey that way. So I contracted at a few studio gyms to start, which was great experience. Considered opening my own gym until I talked to some gym owners who had been in debt for 10, 15, 20 years and still hadn't made it to the black. So I was like, yeah, maybe not. Hindsight was a good choice with COVID popping up. That probably would have been actually. Quick story. I was going to be a spin and studio instructor with my aunt. They were starting up a spin and strength studio. It was scheduled to open February 2020. So as you can imagine, not a great time to open a brand new facility. So it didn't last, but it was like things like that were just those were some unfortunate circumstances. But yeah, so I did personal training for a few different companies. I ended up buying a franchise called Fitness on the Go in 2017. Bought the second portion of the Manitoba franchise in 2018. I ran that for about 7 years, 6 years. And then last year, just coming up to date, last year was my first full year as just solopreneur. I went back to just going back on my own. So I don't have I don't recruit or hire trainers anymore. I just do my own personal training, mostly in home, some at the gym. I do nutrition coaching virtually, and then kind of some foreshadowing on wanting to get some programs lined up that I can just offer online that don't actually involve me being there live, because just diversifying those streams. So, yeah.
I didn't realize you had branched off from Fitness on the Go, so that's huge. You're fully on your own, and that's a big step. But I just want to take a step back on what got you into this, because that's a great story. That's where you're at now. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple big jumps we have to make in training. What got you into the decision, even to begin with, into kinesiology? Typically people go into kinesiology for different reasons. So I was curious, what inspired you to think, hey, let's do kin?
Yeah, and I like the origin story too, because I actually tell a lot of my clients my origin story, because it kind of helps them understand my philosophy and why I do what I do. Pretty open about it. My family is not what you would call healthy living, the beacon of healthy living. So it was actually more of a decision to veer in a different direction from my extended family, my parents and grandparents, who are all on medications, all overweight. None of them really participate in any kind of exercise or a wellness of any kind, really. Mm-hmm. They might try a thing here and there, but nothing really sticks, because there's those old patterns are just grooved really deep. And mm-hmm. It's so it was actually, at the time, I didn't have kids when I was deciding all this, but I'm kind of now noticing it's more of a generational shift, because like what I'm doing, what my wife is doing, is going to be impacting our kids, obviously. And we're both kind of veering in a different direction from our parents and their parents. So long story short, what got me into it was not wanting to seeing what, my parents are, what's happening with their health and chronic conditions they deal with. I just didn't want to be a part of that. Didn't know how to go in a different direction necessarily, because I grew up in kind of the, eat food that tastes good and it's quick and it's easy. And we didn't really learn a lot about how to cook, or like what was in the food, or what was it actually going to do to your body long term if you just keep going with it. And we kind of just followed what everybody else was saying, even though no one had any like real knowledge. They weren't like researchers or people who had any kind of background on health science or anything of the sort. So yeah, I initially got into it to want to positively be kind of a role model and impact our family to want to change parts of their life. Turns out that's really hard to do. So it's not really working in that way, but it is working for people who I kind of take people through a process of, they vet me to see if I'm a good fit. I vet them to see if they're actually serious about like taking action on changing. Because it's easy to say you want something. It's a lot harder to actually do it. I know that in my own personal life, I still have struggles with taking the action part in various areas of my life. But with health and fitness, I seem to have figured that out with the taking action consistently. So I can now pass that on to other people. Hopefully my family asks for a little bit of it someday, but for now it's mostly strangers or references or acquaintances that I've bumped into along the way that I've been able to guide in kind of a different direction. Yeah,
the way you say origin story and inspired by being different, I think is a real great inclination to take, is to be the black sheep for the better of yourself. And it's super common. What you mentioned there with your family, man, it's just, you can't train your family members. Like you can,
Yeah.
yeah, like I will send my programs to my sisters, sometimes my brother if he's in the mood, but you can't really be their trainer. You
Yeah.
know, like my brother could do like the in-person boot camps, that's fine, but like
Yeah.
to be someone's like coach is different. You can't coach, and like I'm not saying other people can't, but most of us can't, and especially our parents. Like my God, that's the worst
Yeah.
coach trainer relationship.
There's just too much like history and background of like assumptions and,
Mhm.
I don't know, power dynamics or
The
just
power
way.
dynamics is big, and
Yeah.
I would say like authority and certainty in what you say. So
Yeah.
when they look at you, especially if your parents, like you're not going to hold as much authority. And
Mm.
I'll I love my mom, but she's like she has a dangerous amount of knowledge that's unhelpful, right? Where she hears all these
Yeah.
influences, and it's like that's not a real thing. That's not the biggest problem. She's worried about this, worried about that. It's like, can you trust me when I say it's not to worry about? And they don't,
Yeah.
because you're not the expert. Now, if a client came to me and said, "Hey, diet drinks are they going to be a health risk?" It's like, no, and I can give you all the facts for it. I can completely support that the diet drinks are fine. There's no research to support any sort of issues. And then, whereas I talked to my mom about it, it's like, well, they just don't know yet. And it's just like, oh, like I could convince someone if they were paying me and they saw me as the expert, and I could make your life easier. But I think one of the hardest things there is it's someone you love and you can't help.
Yeah.
I think that's really one of the biggest challenges, because the only thing you can be there is when they ask questions, answer them. And because if you try to push, a value on them, it's like if they wanted you to go to church when you're an adult, you're basically trying to get your fitness religion on them. They just don't believe it. It's like,
Yeah.
I swear, if you just went to church with me, you believe it. But
Yeah.
you have to not do that. The only time
Yeah.
someone's going to convert to the church is if they're looking for it,
Yeah.
right?
They'll
So
they'll make a decision or they won't. Like yeah.
yeah. So let's keep this story. I want to hit on that difficulty you mentioned. I think this is really important for people to appreciate. It is really difficult for a trainer to find their way. A lot of people kind of get inspired, and I think it's great that more people want to be trainers,
Yeah.
even though part of me knows that can clutter the noise out there. But people
Yeah.
wanting to help others is overall positive. But what
Yeah.
people don't appreciate is how hard it is to make a sustainable lifestyle.
Yeah.
When you
That's what
came
I
out
was.
of university, like you
Yeah.
said, you just picked up whatever you could, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it wasn't like this quick like decision of, oh, this is going to be able to sustain me. I'm going to be able to be financially uh, solid or predictable with this right away. Because it wasn't predictable. Like even in training world right now, I know that there's ups and downs throughout the year. I've just been able to realize that it comes in waves, and you can ride those waves, or you can get frustrated by them, quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly. So, but yeah, initially, like I think this, I don't know if the stats are still this way, but I remember when I got into training, they're like, yeah, most trainers don't make it. Like 90% of the trainers don't make it past year one or year two. I can't remember which one it was, but either way, within the first couple of years, most people are like, wow, this is really hard to do as like your full-time gig. So
Mm-hmm.
there's people they'll do fitness coaching on the side, or they'll do some virtual programs on the side of like a full-time job. But from a sustainability standpoint, I actually thought it was interesting. I learned the most, like, kind of what not to do is pretty early, in terms of like, don't overspend on your advertising, or don't overinvest in the beginning on equipment even, or spaces, unless like what your full plan is, or you're giving yourself a certain amount of time to make that investment back. Because people, I've talked to a few people who've like dumped like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars into their fitness career, like right out of the gate, because they're super excited, they're really passionate about it, and it's like, do you have a kind of a solid idea of how long it's going to take for you to reap that back? Or are you just kind of like big Hail Mary, like hoping that will just come back to you at some point? So I actually kept I guess I was like a low risk investor in the franchise, because I knew what it could make on a yearly basis. Because I had worked under a franchisee in Fitness on the Go first. So I was a trainer first, then it was explained to me, this is a second source of income to be a franchisee. You have all of these trainers that report to you. You have a service, like an area that you represent, and blah, blah, blah. So I was kind of like, I got taught a little bit about the business side of it. So that's probably what I learned more from Fitness on the Go is, first of all, there's a market for mobile training, which is not gym based, which I was getting a little tired of the gym rigmarole anyway, like overcrowded with trainers and a lot of just like bugging people while they're trying to work out, which like I hate that. So like, why am I going to go do that to somebody else? And then, yeah, so it's just interesting. You do have to figure out, I don't think it's so much you need to figure out your niche, but you need to figure out like, what are you willing to invest, either in money or time or both? And then what do you actually have to be making to, or charging, I guess, in a way, what do you have to be charging for your time in order for it to be sustainable long-term? Because I'm sure there are a lot of trainers that are charging less, thinking it's going to get them more clients, but really it makes them stressed out like crazy because they have to work twice as many hours, right? So I think I started training probably $50 an hour, something around that number, and it's gone up considerably. But it's partially because, the knowledge and the experience goes up. You get more results for a certain type of people. You can kind of narrow down your focus. And then you can get results and you can kind of just tell people that's why it's this amount, because I know this works. But it also makes you less stressed out as a trainer, and it becomes more sustainable for you to stay in the industry longer. Because, yeah, I only know a couple people from Fitness on the Go that actually are still in the industry, which means like we've all been in the industry for over a decade, which is, again, pretty rare. I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm assuming the percentages are, 10% or less, probably, considering, the thousands of trainers that come out of schools and certification programs, each year. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that your first paying was $50 an hour. I was doing $25 an hour. And I had to pay for rent. And then I also had boot camps. I was giving like $6 classes. Like I was so cheap because I just wanted the time. You just want the time. You're just so excited. And then when I was, coaching other people, I'm like, hey, it's okay to do a few people like that, but you really can't do a lot. And you should have like a minimum standard, especially when you're doing classes and stuff, because it just like it devalues you too much. And if you know that this person, like some people are shopping around for a deal, I get that. But it's also not great if you're the $25 when someone's $50. And, I've even heard another trainer say, it's like, it also kind of ruins the pool for all other trainers. Because I've had, I was talking to someone recently where I was telling them my price and I was walking through and they're like, it was like half. And I'm like, really? They're training you twice a week? For 4 weeks, for a month for that? I'm like, okay, that's cheap. I'm not going to argue with their price because I don't know how that person's sustaining what they're doing. And, it's there's also like one of the major things there's, like you say, it's a value for the coach, it's value for the person because there's a level of accountability that you're going to have when you're paying someone a decent rate. Now, it isn't like, don't get me wrong, $50, like personal training is expensive. $50 a session once or twice a week. That's a big extra expense monthly for a lot of people, especially nowadays. So I totally get it. Now I'm curious about that transition a little bit from like you were very successful with Fitness on the Go, correct? Like I remember you telling me that you were top of your sales within like the Western. So what made you want to move from Fitness on the Go into your own?
It was a couple things. I'd say the main thing was the leadership structure that was in place, like with our head office and the leadership team that kind of supports the franchisees to grow and to do different things in the community and stuff. They really just kind of dropped the ball with seeing the bigger vision of how the company could continue to serve its clients and also like offer different things. And the communication just started to get really inconsistent and unhelpful, basically. So it was kind of a top-down issue from leadership that kind of we were basically, and I kind of knew this when I bought the franchise because the other franchisee warned me about it, the one who was selling it to me. She's like, "You're not a big market in Manitoba, or they think you're not. So that like you're not going to get as much attention as the Vancouver market or the Toronto market or the markets that have more to spend or that
Mhm.
can potentially make more." And the irony was by us kind of doing our own thing and not really following too much of what head office was putting out as like standard, we actually started to surpass Toronto and surpass Vancouver in terms of our like team sales and our client numbers and our success rates and blah blah blah. Like that's not like an attaboy thing. It's just really interesting that one leadership style can work, but if you kind of look at the strengths of each person, you could learn a lot, and you could all apply the same things. But we were just kind of like left on our own little prairie island where I didn't feel there was a lot of support. So I was like, well, I could still coach trainers and train my clients. I don't really need the support of a or I'm not really getting the support of what a franchise is supposed to be. So I kind of just navigated away from that. It was also just there was a few kind of like messy client situations, and anytime anything has to do with money, it's just doesn't feel good for anyone. And they were really digging their heels in on a few like instances where I was like, this doesn't feel right. So I just wanted to kind of distance myself away from that. They also had kind of, it seemed like they weren't really looking at how they could serve clients better. They were just getting almost desperate to keep people in packages longer, and they lost the client focused approach, which it was there when I started, but it started to go in a different direction, and it just wasn't in alignment with how I operate anymore. So that's fine. It was a chapter. I got to learn a lot from that, and I still use a lot of the services, that Fitness on the Go specialized in when it comes to mobile training and in home, and but yeah, I use it for my client's benefit now. So yeah.
That's great. How do you like doing the on the go, being on the go trainer, like going to meet people at their place? How do you
Yeah.
like doing that style?
I like what it offers the clients in terms of their like comfortability level. I mean, it's super convenient for them. They are at home to do their shower and their change and get on with their day. Um, I also the main reason I prefer to kind of go on the go is I don't really like being stuck in one environment for a whole day, which then becomes a whole week and et cetera. Like I remember I worked in a big box gym for a very short period of time, but even in studio gyms where it's a little bit more like family feel to it, it's still like I'm still just in this same like 20 by 40 box every day with the artificial lighting and the same music playing and all this stuff. So it's just kind of it gives a little bit more variability to the day when you're going to different houses, different music, natural lighting. You could go outside and work out with someone out in their yard, or I just like the mobile aspect because it provides a little bit of spice to the day, so
Yeah.
it's not all in the same place. I also found retention is a lot higher because a lot of the times, we live in Winnipeg, so if the weather's bad, people might not come to the gym to get to their session even, right? Or and even on a scheduling standpoint, like people are 15 minutes late to a session, they don't get what they could have from the workout, or they got to leave 15 minutes early because traffic sucks and they're going to dinner, like all these kind of little things. I'm like, let's take the driving out of the way. Let's take a crowded gym environment out of the way and just kind of put you in a spot where, oh, and then the last part was, then they know how to do, if they're ever in a jam for needing to do a workout and I'm not there or they don't want to go to a gym. We've been working out at home for a year or 3 years. Like they know how to do that stuff at home now and should be able to do it in their sleep. So
Yeah.
there's a few reasons, but it's usually just to remove barriers for people to just be able to get it get consistent with their routine. So
Absolutely. It's probably the best way to remove all barriers, have the person
Yeah.
deliver you the whole program right at your front door. I think that's great. Now, so that right there is like such a powerful thing to be able to get people. What's been some of the? Oh, actually, I was going to ask you this. I remember you telling me you actually used to join your clients for some of the workouts. I know during COVID you did. Do you still currently work out with them part of the time, most of the time? Like how much do you hop into the workout?
Um, Depends on the person. Like I would say the people that are, I have a bit of a demographic that's still like working professionals and they work out pretty hard. So I can't pop into every one of their workouts or I'm going to just be fried.
Right.
Um, I probably, and then certain people, they actually, they kind of get a little bit, competitive. So I like to jump in on their workouts and try to kind of push the pace a little bit or challenge them. Like you could use heavier weights. Come on, man. Like it's usually a
Right.
guy. Come on, bro. Like,
Yeah.
um, so like in those cases, I'll hop in. But a lot of the times, if I'm in my more 65 plus client demographic, they need a lot more hands-on like cueing and checking for posture and even sometimes just making sure they don't fall over if we're doing balance work or we're doing functional training that they're not used to. So it's a lot more spotting and like technique correction with those. So I don't really jump in on workouts with them other than doing some demos. Um, but I'll usually get for myself whether I'm doing it with clients or kind of in my own routine. I'll usually get about 3 workouts, 4 workouts a week. I've gone down in frequency and kind of up the intensity in the last year. So I felt really good doing like 45-minute workouts with a little less rest on in between sets and a little bit more hit training and things like that. So like I said, up in the intensity and maybe not going 5 or 6 days a week. It's more like 3 or 4. So I've found that a lot of my clients actually have preferred that. They don't like to be doing necessarily a full hour of training. So just trimming it down a bit. 45 minutes seems to be more of a sweet spot, and that's probably what I might. I'll probably offer that more often going forward. But
Yeah, the high intensity stuff is it's so cool to see how impactful just a more intense set is.
yeah,
Like, I try to break that down for people quite often is that one hard 30-second set of squats, or could be whatever,
yeah,
let's say just lower body, one hard 30-second set, just one. Now there's protocol to ramp you up to make that one set hard.
yeah,
But I believe that one 30 seconds is more impactful than a 30-minute jog for a lot of people.
yeah,
Not that 30-minute jog can help a lot of people, don't get me wrong, if it's, depending on the
yeah,
spectrum and where they're fit, but the 30 seconds of just hard, intense pushing can do so much for you metabolically because of just what it does for your muscle and your function, all those
yeah,
things. And so the challenge there, and this is why it's good that you're in person, is to make sure people can handle something intense.
yeah, yeah.
It's like there's so
Yeah, we don't do
often,
that on the first day.
yeah, and then you got to get to know your client, and then you got to be like, no, you can go a little heavier. Like and
Yeah,
there's some exercises where people will push and they're not afraid to push. Like, it's safe to push a curl till you can't curl. But it's like it's some of the lower body movements, even sometimes upper body pushing for a lot of females.
yeah, bench
Like
press, overhead press, you got to watch.
people are very afraid of feeling something heavy,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
feel something heavy. And I have this one client will always say, oh, that's heavy. It's like it's supposed to be, but that's
yeah.
why you're only doing like 5 to 6 reps, because those are the really effective sets. Like those are the things that really push you forward. So what are some of the big things that you'd say you've learned from being this style of coach, being in person, getting to know your clients over the years? What are some of the big things that you've learned from working with these types of individuals, both goods and bads, for the whether that's training habits or nutritional habits? What are some things that kind of come to mind?
Um, yeah, this was kind of trails off from the last part of the last question you asked when it comes to like why, like what's good about the in-home stuff. And the other answer that ties into this is you get to see more than just what people do like in the gym. So when I'm at their home, I can, I'll go open up their fridge. I'll go open up their pantry. I'll be like,
Mm.
hey, this looks delicious. What's in this? Check out what they've made for the day. Look at the kids' snacks. Like, what are you feeding the kids? Like, not from a judgment lens, but just to go, oh yeah, like there's this person that's not just this person in this 1 hour. It's like they've got this whole day planned ahead of them, and before I got there. So I think what I've learned is just to remember that it's more what I'm leaning towards is doing more lifestyle coaching with a focus on fitness and nutrition. But it's still, how are we going to make this, attainable and sustainable for the whole, spectrum of what your lifestyle includes. So I'm learning that, certain people like to be pushed and encouraged to do more, and certain people are stressed to be pushed and do more, and then I'm learning more about, as I said, the origin story. I'm asking that a lot more when I talk to people. It's really important to figure out, how did you grow up? What were your activity habits or your food habits growing up? Because that's a big part of where you are now, is how you were conditioned when you grew up. So like those are in an initial consultation with someone before we even decide to work together. Like what are some of the things that you're already kind of pre-wired to to think about when it comes to fitness or nutrition. So I get it's mostly just learning about the diversity of people, but also like things that we might not be, like as coaches and trainers, things that we might not be influenced by, some other people might be very influenced by. Like, I saw this new exercise on TikTok. What do you think? And it's like, that's completely unnecessary. I don't know why the hell we would ever need to do that. Like just there's just random stuff like, oh, this looks cool. I wanna try implement this. And it's like, I think that you as a trainer at some point you eventually become the little kid. Why? Like, why do you think that's a good idea, or why were you even looking at that in the first place? Like,
Yeah.
which is fine. Like, there's usually actually a good answer or a good reason they were looking into it. Like, oh, I'm bored with our leg days are getting boring. I was just looking up stuff. Cool, that's good information for me to know. And that's another thing I'm learning. Like, the less offended you can be about a client's feedback, the better, because really it's going to help you help them more if you actually just take it, think about it, and figure out like why, like they're not bringing this up as like something to throw in my face, because we're in a mutually beneficial relationship here. They need something that's not being given to them. So I should better pay attention. So before it was like, oh, I know better than you. Like, you just do what I tell you, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes you don't know better than the client, because they know themselves and they know how they live and they know what they're going to listen to and what they're not. So it's just kind of like being less triggered or offended and just more receptive, I guess. That's that's a big one. That also comes with having kids now, because that's something you got to remember, is they're not like intentionally trying to make you mad. It's just kind of a side effect, or yeah.
Yeah, it's their perspective. Like, I think that's such a valuable thing for a coach to appreciate, and I think it's a real maturing stage in a trainer's life is their perspective. Like, it's just like, try to take their lens. You nailed it when you said that we're lifestyle coaches. That's always what a training or a nutrition coach is like, we have the labels of training and nutrition, but it's like the lifestyle, like it's every day. A trainer can even get away with, like, especially if you have a sport trainer, some people just have more physical goals, and you can segregate more of the physical activity to a certain time of the day for a certain result, very like more systematically. But when it comes to nutrition and trying to achieve something with your physique, when it has to do with body composition, it's going to be lifestyle. And the lifestyle, even for the training, still like sleep and all stress, all these things will overlap. But what you mentioned is super important, is like, what is their life like? And I think that's so cool that you get to see into their home. Hey, what are you eating? what do you make it for your kids in like a curious way to help guide them on that, because that is something that people like to see, even for them to see, where I train, where I do all this stuff. And just to be able to say to them once in a while, it's like, why, like, they had this Instagram post. Why were you curious about this? Like, what made you think of this? And so I've definitely been trying to do that myself more, is just ask the clients, like, hey, what kind of exercises do you really like? Because I know what I prefer, and I write a lot of the ones that I think most people will enjoy, that won't be too difficult, that won't be too awkward. But, do you like certain ones? And then they'll mention, oh, I really like using this kind of cable. I like using this kind of machine. I love this one. And if you say, I love an exercise, as long as I feel like it's beneficial, we're going to keep it in there, right? Yeah. Rather than feeling like we need to change things up. And that open communication of their perspective is super integral. Now, you mentioned TikTok, you mentioned, the social media. So I love asking all trainers this. What is some of the stuff that's really pissing you off about social media these days?
I don't think we have enough time on here. No, I actually, I haven't really been, I'm more of a consumer on social media at this point. Like I don't put anything out. I actually haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure my last post was something like 3 years ago. Partially because with kids, it's like to actually go and put a post together, a proper one with like good content and like nice whatever. First of all, I don't know how to do that. Like I'm not a content creator of any kind. But yeah, I just kind of steered away from social media as a way to influence people. But I guess to answer your question in a short form, people kind of picking up, like there's way too much information everywhere, right? But it's like who is the person that is trying to pick apart the information? And like, are they just like looking at one research study from one thing that was funded by one bigger corporation to send us one particular message? Like it's all so narrowed in on this is the message we're trying to get across. And, you're either on our side or not. I think the division is a little bit frustrating. Yeah, like if we could consume social media, whatever is coming up, if we could consume it just with like, this is just information. Like there's no like, oh, I think that's stupid. Oh, that's great. Oh, no, I don't agree with that. Oh, yes, I agree with that. Like it's all division, right? Which is, I think, a lot of what social media thrives on is the division. And that's where all the comments come in and all the like trolling and all this stuff. So I think it would be helpful to just kind of look at information from social media when it comes to health and fitness even. Like, does this apply to me? First of all, does this apply to my life? Is it going to be something that I need to store, or is this just extra noise that is going to, distract me from whatever I'm focusing on right now? Yeah. And I actually, I've been using social media more to follow, certain accounts of like people, like credible people that I trust what they have to say. And a lot of it is, goes kind of against the grain with a lot of messaging that our generation was given, like put on sunscreen, stay out of the sun. And it's like, we've lived in the sun for thousands of years. The sun is not going to kill you. Like things like that, where that's not popular, right? Because people are like, well, you need sunscreen, you need sunglasses. And it's like, really? Did our ancestors like need to lather up before they go out every day?
Right.
So just stuff that is, it's not so much like a hard, like fighting against this, that, or the other thing. It's just like, let's just question where this came from. Why do you where do you think that came from? Or why do you think we do things this way? So it's more of people like questioning things. Yeah. As opposed to just taking like, no, this is fact. Like eggs are bad. They said so, and it's like, yeah, but why? Was it funded by, people that don't want to have the chicken industry do well, or,
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah.
just, yeah, stuff like that. But
No, you're 100% right that you get to see this stuff on social media that is targeted at a specific narrative, and they sometimes will try to use research with one specific study or one line. And most of us on social media aren't the type to go look up studies and what was actually said or done in the study, and it
yeah,
could not even be
no context. That's
no
probably
context.
a simple like summarization of what I said. Like it's all context relevant
Yeah.
to, does this apply to me? Is this going to be useful? Or am I just like kind of letting my brain be filled with crap?
And is it even a good study? Like there's so
Yeah,
many
well,
problems with studies can be approved, but this doesn't mean it's a good study. And what people don't realize is like there's study of studies, and that's when you actually get excited when you have meta-analysis.
yeah,
Most people don't know what a meta-analysis is. And so people can get so excited when they see some research, but then, if especially what goes along with their narrative, and then if there's the opposite story, you don't get to hear about it, especially when, I do think it's valuable that you can question some narratives. I totally agree with that. Like there's certain things within health and nutrition and training that we get taught certain things, and these ideas can change over time.
yeah,
And I think that's where people get almost frustrated because like, oh, they told us that eggs are bad and butter were bad, but now eggs are good. Like, I don't understand. And it's like, well,
yeah,
the research changes in time, and research, as you mentioned, is funded in certain ways that can skew data. And I think the way you mentioned is like, I think everyone should, to some degree, take in the information.
yeah,
I think you should just try to pay attention to, it's okay to actually even hear some of these far end voices, because
yeah,
these far end extreme voices aren't all wrong. And I think that's the one thing that I try to do and more people should do is, like you had mentioned, context. Like, what could they be right about? And
yeah,
even if someone like the Liver King is like all full of shit when it comes to what he's doing, he was on, steroids and all that stuff, but he's talking about going for walks, doing heavy carries,
yeah,
eating mostly like whole food. You don't have to eat liver raw, even though that was his thing. But he even came up with a supplements, like at least get some nutrients. But
yeah,
the really interesting thing, even with his, was he had so many people before it came out that he was, using drugs. He had so many people leaving comments about like, I've been following your stuff. I can't believe how good this is. One guy said he was like, I was an absolute skeptic, but then my wife's autoimmune disorder got changed. He's like, there's something to what people say sometimes, right?
yeah,
And so I think it's valuable to take in other people's information, and then you got to be like, well, where do you want to hedge your bets? Because do you need to hedge your bets that you need to eat a giant piece of liver? No, I don't think you do.
yeah,
Now, and this is where like Paul Saladino would be the other one where he's just all this far and extreme stuff. And he'll, there was this one reel where he used his shirt to grab the receipt, because the receipt had BPA on, or the some phthalates on it. And it's like, okay, I'm not sure if you're doing this just for social
a
media,
little much,
and I'm also want to bet he's that psychotic, because he's clearly a very eccentric, extreme guy.
yeah,
And that there's this level of like just complete micromanagement on your health that is exhausting for people now.
it is, yeah,
And so and so like some people, I think his message was also valuable though, because some people have autoimmune issues. You get the Michaela Petersons of the world where they just eat nothing but meat, and oh my goodness, I'm not depressed, I don't have arthritis anymore, and this changed my life. So these people, the far and extreme, can be helped. But then all of a sudden you have an everyday person that could eat just a pretty healthy life and do basically the fundamentals. And now they're thinking seed oils are toxic. And now they're thinking everything has to be pure, pure, pure.
yeah,
And then the person who can't get that done, but thinks that's why other people are getting it done, it clouds the information so much,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of muddying the waters. Like you can look realistically, if we could look at both extremes and go, how could I learn and extract what I need from their perspective that would help me, and from their perspective that would help me, even though they're like polar opposite, right? Because I think if you're, I don't know, if you use like the example of eggs, for instance, that were good for you for a long time, then in the 90s they weren't, or 80s and 90s or whenever, now they are again. It's like, okay, but like, is it relevant for you? Like, did you ever eat eggs? Are you going to continue eating them? Do you want to maybe just question where they're sourced? Like, do you want to, like, we get our eggs from a farm nearby. They just have chickens running around. Almost ran over a chicken when I was going to get eggs one time. Like, they're not penned up, right? So, like, I'd rather eat an egg from there than somewhere from a store that I just don't know where it's been sourced. But that's just, I didn't get there in one step. Like, I've eaten eggs from the store my whole life, and then I got some from a farm, and I'm like, holy crap, these yolks are like bright and deep, like orange, and they taste amazing, like all this stuff. But it was like, I wasn't like saying like, okay, well, you have to eat like only farm eggs. Even if you can't find a farmer, like make it happen. Like you don't have to go to those really extreme levels, depending on if it applies to you. Like our family goes through a lot of eggs, so that's kind of for us. We needed to find something sustainable. Like we probably have 6 to 8 eggs a day. We go through a flat in about a week. Sometimes 2 flats, depends if we're baking or not. So
Yeah, no,
yeah, you just take information and figure out like how can you learn from both of the polar opposites opinions out there, and then figure out also if it's even relevant to your life. Like if you never had seed oils in your pantry, does it matter if you agree with them being carcinogenic or not? Like probably not.
yeah.
If it wasn't a part of your diet anyway, like you don't have to go into this big uproar. Yeah.
Context, as you mentioned, I love how you say that. Yeah, it's the dirty details that don't do well on social media, right? And the way you said that is really good, because I love the good example of the opposites is carnivores and vegans, right? Yeah. And what are they both saying?
I was hoping you were going to talk about that today.
Yeah, like because like what are they both saying that like they would agree with? It's like, well, eat less processed shit. Like eat mostly whole food. Like that's what both of them are actually talking about. Paleo, keto, carnivore, vegan, all of them, any of the ones that even have a name on them, none of them are saying that we should have mostly processed food. Yeah. And the only
really unhealthy vegan that eats all packaged foods that say Beyond Meat and Beyond this, and it's like, do you know how many like processed, ingredients that you don't want to know what they are in those Beyond Meat burgers and stuff? It's like we've been doing mostly plant-based. Alyssa probably told you this when she was on. We've been doing mostly plant-based. I still eat meat. We still eat eggs. Like we get them from different sources and we have them once in a while. And this is a chapter. I will probably go back to eating, more of a meat-centric at some point, but I'm trying what it feels like to be plant-based, because I actually started with a couple of different new clients last year that were vegetarian. And I'm like, I've never actually done that. I should see how that feels on my body and my energy to kind of gauge what their life is like. Because I was interested. And I know you've done that before. Like you've experimented like with different diets just to know firsthand, like what it does, how it feels, what it does for you, how it affects maybe your fitness performance, like in the gym and different things like that. Yeah. And it's, we make a few switches and it's not the end of the world. Like I went to my naturopath, started seeing a naturopath in the fall, and she's like, I'm going to try to put you on no dairy for 2 months. And initially my brain was going, oh shit. Because I'm like, I love cheese. Like I grew up with cheese on everything. Right. And I'm like, I can't do it. That was just in my head. And then, she's like, yeah, just take out, these 4 things mainly. And I was like, I could probably do that. I might not like not having cheese on stuff, but it's like, it's not going to like totally rock my world to be like, you can't have cheese or milk for 2 months. And turns out, I'm less inflamed in different parts of my body because of it. So there was actually merit to trying that, right? Like it affected my sinuses, like from gut inflammation into, sinus inflammation. So just really interesting. I would have never thought to try that. And I wouldn't have thought cheese was the culprit, But yeah.
That's something I've spoken about recently, is that I think elimination diets are underrated because you don't know what your food sensitivity is, because that's also the spectrum of, I think, food sciences that we really need to start to venture into. Because big part of the carnivore diet is essentially a massive elimination diet. And a lot of naturopaths will do a form of an elimination diet with you because there are a lot of different, even otherwise healthy foods for some individuals that could be unhealthy for others.
Yeah.
And that is dairy is a prime example, but gluten's another one where not just celiacs, and I do believe that there's a gluten sensitivity spectrum similar to dairy. Dairy can be or like with dairy, you could have lactose intolerance and you're running to the bathroom. Like it's not going to be bad. Yeah. And then it could just be like you're gassy. And that's like 70% of the world's population has that. And so I imagine with gluten, it's similar. Now, some people will be hypersensitive and some people maybe gassy, a little bloated. And some people might be able to have bread every day. And you wouldn't know it unless you take a lot of these foods out and slowly reintroduce them and make sure, okay, what's the symptom? Oh, this actually came up. I actually noticed this again. And, for myself, I recently realized some of the sugar-free sauces that I was using were causing a ton of IBS. And I love my sugar-free sauces. Like I would just pour on this sugar-free barbecue sauce. They had sweet chili sugar-free that had like no calories. I'm like, this is the best sauce ever. Yeah. Turns out I'm going to walk like a blimp the rest of the day. And I'm going to just, crop dust every area I'm at because I had too much of this because of the xylitol in it. Yeah. And that's just my genetics. And that's just what you got to deal with. Right. So I love how you say that, where you're trying these different things out. And I think that's a great way of understanding your client more. I said years ago that I might try a vegan diet one day. I haven't felt the urge as much, but one day I still think I might because I'm open to attempting it. Not that I think that people really have to do it for health, but I think that it's like if it's within their values, even if it's just mentally eating meat, I think that's valuable for a person to say, hey, I'm more comfortable just eating this way. Okay. Yeah. You can go that route. But I do want to shift gears here because we had your wife on, Alyssa, and, incredible story. You always told me that she had some issues. I didn't know it was that deep and that, she's a walking case of Dr. House. But like in real life and in real life, Dr. House doesn't seem to exist because it's just the medical industry that's just going to try to keep guessing and spitting random things.
Yeah, she got a lot of stuff spit out that wasn't helpful.
Yeah. So I wanted to know from your perspective, what was it like having to, help her through this?
I would say, like, to sum it up, it was frustrating and exhausting because I could see how frustrating and exhausting it was for her to kind of be going to these specialist appointments and going in for testing and no one took her stuff seriously enough to say, oh, there might be something going on here that we should look into. And very interesting, she might have told you, but one of my clients was like head of internal medicine at I think it was St. Boniface at the time. And I told him about what was going on, and he ended up running a bunch of kind of tests and having her in. And I think he took it more seriously than a regular kind of specialist or a doctor would because of the attachment to, this is my wife. Like, this is not just hocus pocus symptoms that she's making up because she wants a prescription. She actually hates prescriptions, so don't write her one because she won't use it. Because she wants a natural remedy. She wants to actually know, like, and uncover past the symptoms, what's the root. So thankfully, I kind of knew somebody that would humor me, I guess, and be able to take her words with a very big grain of salt and know that it wasn't just stuff she's making up. Because otherwise it was just like I remember the first appointment I went with her to a neurologist appointment. It was 10 minutes long. First of all, you're not going to learn anything in 10 minutes. And she basically like wrote her a prescription for, it was either an anti-inflammatory or an antidepressant. And I'm like, you're not fucking listening. Like that's not going to do anything for what we came in here for. She's like, well, she has fibromyalgia. This is normal. It's like, no, it's just like, it was a battery of that for years and years. of just kind of frustration. And then it just became tiring it became tiring for me because I didn't know how to support somebody that wasn't really given a clear diagnosis, wasn't really given any practical things they could do. She was researching the crap out of everything, which she is amazing at, and that's why she basically healed herself in a way, in a big way, because she uncovered a lot of what was going on. But yeah, I would just say it was hard to be in my line of work. I know 95% of the time I know how to solve a problem or come up with small steps, incremental things to make progress and move in a different direction. I couldn't do that, which was really frustrating for me. That's why I think that was the biggest word that came up, because I'm a man. We like to fix things. We like to solve problems. And this just wasn't something that was a quick fix, or even something that had like clear steps on like, here's what to do when you have, an infected disc in your spine. It's like, no idea. So yeah, it was a ride.
And like, I mean, even for a part of her journey there, she wasn't even aware of the infected disc, right? It was just like, it was a mystery. And so for years,
until it literally started bulging out of her, diaphragm. Yeah.
Right. And that's what was just so incredible is, and I only mildly understand fibromyalgia. It's almost like a chronic pain thing. Like it just goes to show how little we know in the medical industry. It's like we actually don't get doctors like House that are just sitting around trying to figure things out. And even watching that show, although I know it's, science fiction, like, you ever sit down and listen to doctors pick it apart. It's not real. But at the same time, there is so many real problems in the body that we know so little about. And so that's what makes it so difficult when you have something very unique. But like, and then the other thing that you have to go through that's such a real challenge is it's one thing to go through your own pain. And Alyssa handled it, from what I can tell, like a champ. Like she just had this ability to just, accept the pain, manage the pain. And I mean, but for you to be her supporter, watching someone else go through pain is a different kind of pain. It's it's uncontrollable.
It was probably worse. Like it felt worse. Mostly because I like I said, I had nothing I could do to remove that or kind of take it in a different direction. But yeah, like you're at some point, and I've probably verbalized it to her many times. It's like, I wish I could take some of that for you or off of you or whatever, and just kind of have to deal with that. So I kind of or I can have some semblance of an understanding of what you're going through, because there's no way to describe it. Like you can watch someone, but you really just don't know. And yeah, when it comes to the medical industry, I mean, they probably know, well, not probably, they definitely know less about what's going on with your body than you do. Whether people give themselves enough credit about knowing, even if it's just like this, I have an intuition that this IBS medication that I was prescribed isn't actually going to help me with my IBS, because there's something else that is the root of it, right? That's not in my gut. It could be, skin, some skin, like just anyway. So like, even if someone just has an idea of like, this symptom treater that I've been prescribed, which, that's a whole other podcast probably, but that's not, that's not really knowing how to solve what's going on in my body, So I think people can, if they take anything from Alyssa's story, it's just kind of listen to your body and kind of, and don't be convinced that, there's going to be any magic pill that can kind of get you back to homeostasis. Like your body's always trying to get back to homeostasis if you remove things that are getting in the way. And usually prescription drugs are actually getting in the way of that immunity, of that healing process, right? Like, yeah, there's a lot of, drugs and chemo and stuff that actually just fries your immune system. And they do it on purpose. And we've been doing it and thinking like it's helping. And it's like, yeah, but our body knows what to do. You just got to get out of the way.
Mm.
And like, yeah,
Yeah.
I think the more important question of our time is how do we decode what our body's trying to tell us, whether that's with testing or whether that's with like neural scans or something. That would be really cool. Instead of just like doing a blood test or talking to a doctor for 10 minutes and then them writing something on a pad, like I don't know, that's lazy, but that's also just what the medical system is right now. And
Mhm.
that's what they're trained to do. Like they're doing what they're trained to do. It's nothing against being a doctor in the field. That's just it's how it was designed. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
heard a really good hospitals were designed to treat acute diseases, like people that were either going to die or not die, like right there on the table.
Mhm.
They were never meant for all of this massive influx of people who are there for chronic conditions in and out of the hospital every week or every day, even like that. The system was never meant to handle that because chronic diseases were not really a thing before we kind of had lifestyle shifts, which comes back to us being lifestyle coaches on the preventative end. Like if we can kind of tackle that lifestyle aspect or that cultural aspect, then we might not make it to the prescription pad at the end of that cycle, right? To fix one thing or the other. But
Yeah, you kind of nailed it that most of the times doctors are going to try to get rid of your symptoms because like even in the event that you have maybe it's a bad cold or virus, they might give you antibiotics, but a lot of the times even stuff is just get rid of the feeling of shitty and your body's going to fight it off. And we know that we want to step out of the way for the immune system. And we want to, if you can give someone something that lowers the symptoms while the body is doing it. And the other thing that I empathize for with doctors is that people are lazy. People won't always do the things that you want them to do. And people have a lot of psychology that goes into these things.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel for Alyssa and her problem because how many people will talk about symptomatic pain and it could just be on their head, right? So a doctor actually will blank slate a lot of people like that because you get so many people. Like, I mean, it's terrible. That's a 10-minute interview and you're going to generalize that much. But with like from their perspective, people generally could lie about the symptoms or just, over amplify it. However, you mentioned one of the major things that is just not integrated enough within the medical industry right now, and hopefully it changes over time, is understanding the first care. And that's what people always call the preventative care. There's a different term for it. It's like primary care physician, basically talk about doing nutrition, right? Like a lot of people are getting so much of their issues from, and we mentioned this about food sensitivity. And if we can have high quality with good research supported food sensitivity testing that a doctor and a dietitian could then prescribe people, that would completely change the world because a lot of people do have their issues coming from the food they're eating. And so if you allow that to be the first thing, and as you mentioned, like you were getting sinus issues, like, hey, I really love cheese, but it's like, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe that one thing that's causing so much disruption in my life, choose the thing that actually, like, there's probably other foods that are going to taste good. And so it's important that hopefully the medical field can evolve to have that, what they call that primary care, the initial thing, which is why, I remember hearing this years ago. And it was actually from John Berardi from, the PNF, or sorry, PN Nutrition. And he mentioned trainers are the frontline workers. we are the first interaction with people caring about their health. Because the medical industry gets them way down the line when it's a problem.
Exactly.
And
it's like pretty far gone.
And we're actually not really licensed or given the tools to give people the nutrition info that makes the biggest impact. Right. So like people come to you as a trainer and be like, let's do some stuff. What should I eat? Even though we're not supposed to have that conversation, but we have to. We're not supposed to, but we have to tell them what, like, some ideas. So it's just, it's a broken system. And at the end of the day, we're trying to figure it out as we as we drive this thing. So,
Yeah.
well, let's bring this home with my favorite question to ask people is, what is your most recent ambition? What are you really excited about coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, two-part answer, because what I'm excited about in medicine is something called functional medicine. You probably heard
Yes,
something
absolutely.
about it, but basically it looks at the body from a systems approach, as opposed to liver does this, spleen does this, kidney does this. It's like, how do all these things interact with one each other and communicate with each other? Because they obviously do, to make the system work, or the human work as a whole entity. So if we can like get people, and functional medicine doctors, they will be kind of like a naturopath. They were going to ask a ton of questions about everything that you think is not connected to the symptoms you came in with, or the stuff that you want to talk about. It's all like lifestyle, stressors, what are you putting in, what is going out, like all those different things. That's what's exciting, because then it's not just what are your symptoms, how can I get rid of it, like you said before, right? So it's a much more humanistic approach. That leads me into, I'm excited about, I want to create some programs that are kind of funneling people into finding out their own nutritional program through, like, basically, like, you've got these pockets of, like you talked about, like paleo, keto. Are you like, what are you interested in trying? And how does your specific lifestyle, body type, workout routine, how does that apply to you building your own nutrition program? So I actually want to, it's kind of funny, instead of like just building someone's nutrition program for them, do it with them, but have them do a lot of the heavy lifting of, well, here's what I like. Here's what I want my food to taste like. Here's how often I want to eat. And like, sometimes you can't just give them, like, you can't give them all the reins and just be like, yeah, just build your own nutrition
Yeah.
program. Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll give you some results. Like, it'll be contained, but it'll be a lot more collaborative of, let's do this together. Let's figure out what you're interested in. Don't just pick a fad diet because you think it sounds good, or you think your friend got really good results with it or something. And I want to make, programs for people, nutrition programs for people, that they can just go in and kind of build their own, build their own meals, so to speak. And then they would have, fitness programs and suggestions, lifestyle suggestions that go along with that. But getting a little bit more out of the in-person training, and more into kind of that lifestyle and nutrition coaching from, from a membership type of feel to it. So people can kind of join our community, have a membership, and just have some services that are offered, virtually, because we're going to want to do a lot more traveling in the years to come. So I don't want to be locked into like just Winnipeg or just one place. I want to be able to do the nomadic remote work, and still be able to do something that I really think is impactful. So
That's great. I love that. And I think that is where nutrition has to really be, is the holistic approach, helping someone choose their own path. I've always said that it's not anyone else's diet, it's your diet. And I actually want to take the term diet back. And I don't care if it's a diet culture. I care if the word diet means something. And it does. By definition, it's the food that an organism needs to survive. And people are just like, I'm an anti-diet coach. It's like, you have a diet. Just own it. Like, it doesn't have to have anyone else's name on it other than you. And so if you can give people that choice and autonomy, they're also going to sustain it long term. And it always evolves, like you evolve as a person. So I think that's the right choice. Why don't you let people know where they can find more about your stuff?
Well, I do have an Instagram. It's just at Jayce Van Alstyne. Maybe put that in the show notes or something.
Yeah.
That's a whole mouthful there.
Yeah, it is.
Otherwise, my business name is Forever Fit Active Living. That's where people can get a hold of me. And my number is 204-803-4998. That's my business number. If people want to inquire about what I do, and if I can help them out, then love to chat.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jayce. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Thanks to Jayce for that conversation. I really appreciated being able to chat with him, because I've known Jayce for so long. I knew him way back in kinesiology. I still remember the day we became buddies in our human anatomy lab. Both of us were just making some sarcastic comments about some stuff in the lab. And then we were both laughing about it, and we just kept doing that every lab. And then before I knew it, we were buddies in kinesiology. And he was actually one of the very first friends I made in that class in the whole faculty. And I didn't know that many people in the faculty. And so we ended up being really close friends while we were doing the schooling. And then after schooling, we would keep tabs over the years. And he actually even did a better job than I did, always trying to hang out over the last few years. And it's great to see the success that he has, because he's such a hardworking guy, especially with how well he's done with fitness on the go. And I just want to highlight a couple of things. And one thing for people to appreciate how hard it is for trainers in the industry when we first start off is that it is not a guaranteed career. It can be very difficult. And that's why I do a lot of the social media. That's why, you see so many people on social media, is because it's just getting clients can be a really tough thing. And it's a tough thing for people to afford, to be able to have a trainer or a coach. So along with other things, maybe you own a business or don't. And so then that becomes a very difficult thing for people to decide when they're in this industry. But it's great to see how well, Jayce has done and how he's transitioned it into being independent now on his own. Because I know he was just doing very well. He was crushing it with fitness on the go. And I think it's such a cool system that they've been able to work out, is to give the person the actual attention in their home, where you're knocking down all barriers, as he mentioned, to be able to make it as simplified as possible. I really loved his idea of, hey, I get to see how they're cooking their food, what's prepped and everything like that. And they can show their trainer, which they would be very excited about. And I think that shows just a real core and intimate level of personal training, which I think is really awesome. And I really value hearing his perspective of his story with Alyssa, because I cannot imagine how difficult that would be. I know if me and Angelina are going through that, and anytime she's sick, I always feel it. And it's hard because you can't take it from them. You can't do anything when the other person is in the pain. You have to just watch them go through pain, which is its own form of pain for you. It's not physical pain. It's just mental and emotional pain. So it's really difficult, but for him to be who he was for her was a huge, huge role, as Alyssa talked about in her episode. And so I think it's just really incredible to hear both sides of that story, when the medical industry is not there to support you, but they were there to support each other and to battle through it. And I think although it is significantly better, they still have doctor meetings. They're still working things out with their health. And it's just really cool to see how a really strong-willed, strong-minded couple and a supportive couple can get through really difficult times together. Just a reminder again that I have that do-it-yourself fitness group. Please reach out if you want to be in it. Just message me on Instagram, wherever you hear these messages, on email, anything. DIY, do-it-yourself fitness group, and I will show you the ropes that you need to help you on your fitness journey in 2025. Thanks again, Jayce. Thank you for listening. If you can, leave a review, as always. But most importantly, I just want you to always appreciate the mantra of this podcast, that life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather it's about the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.